going to now turn to Maseches Tamid. And we're going to use our V'hashev es ha'avoda. So everybody that has a V'hashev es ha'avoda, please have your V'hashev es ha'avoda. What we're going to try to do, it is about 10:06 now. We're going to try to do by 11 o'clock, or maybe earlier, but we're going to try to do by 11 o'clock, review the whole Maseches Tamid. And we're going to review it by going through in order each thing as it was done, as we learned it in Maseches Tamid. In order to do that, first, let's look at the V'hashev es ha'avoda, our beautiful sefer, so that we can use it and continue to use it every single day. Because once we have a mental picture of the Beis Hamikdash, which we have from our Midos diagram number 3, and we have a brief summary of Maseches Tamid in our minds, before we daven Shachris every day, before we daven Mincha every day, we can quite literally take 5 minutes, close our eyes, and run through the whole Seder HaAvoda as if we're bringing the Korban Tamid, which we should be merited to do from Her Yamein. First of all, we always use Midos diagram 3, which is wonderful. Comes from the Kahati Mishnayos. If you open your V'hashev es ha'avoda to the inside of the cover, you have V'hashev es ha'avoda version of diagram 3. It is a very good diagram of the Beis Hamikdash. On page 13, which is where we're going to start today, Perek Aleph of Maseches Tamid, you have the Mishnayos. If you're going to review the Mishnayos, and you want to know where a picture is to help you understand the Mishnah, so then you turn to your index, which is page 37. On page 13, the Mishnayos begin. On page 37, you have the index of pictures. So, for example, the first Mishnah in Tamid talks about the Kohanim guarding the Beis Hamikdash in 3 places. So, the first entry on the index says, B'shloshim makomos v'Beis Hamoged Shmiras HaKohanim. Where can I find a picture of the Shmiras HaKohanim? It tells you Amud 45, Tamuna 1. So you turn to page 45 and picture 1, and it's giving you an example of a Kohen standing guard in the Beis Hamikdash. If you want to see where the Kohen stood guard in the Beis Haftinas, index says page 46, picture 2, and so on and so forth as you read a Mishnah. If you need a picture to help you understand the Mishnah, go to page 37 and look up the index. If you look at the right side of the index, it says Pei Aleph Mem Aleph, means Perek Aleph Mishnah Aleph. And then it keeps on going in order of the Mishnayos. Perek Aleph Mishnah Aleph, Perek Aleph Mishnah Beis, Perek Aleph Mishnah Gimel. So if I'm learning Perek Aleph Mishnah Gimel, and it talks about Kohanim carrying 2 torches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 entries from the bottom of page 37. It says Pei Aleph, Perek Aleph, Mem Gimel Mishnah Gimel. Ushtei Avukos Shel Or Biyodam. The Mishnah says that they carried 2 torches as they went in to check the Azorah. You move over to the column, it says Amud 61, Tamuna 36. You go to page 61, picture 36, and you see 2 groups of Kohanim, one in the front of your picture, one in the back of the picture. Each of them is carrying a torch. And that's how the V'hashev es ha'avoda works. You learn the Mishnah page 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. You have a question of what something looked like, go to page 37, 38, etc. of the index. Look up the Mishnah in the right-hand column. The left-hand column will give you the page and the picture that will help you understand the Mishnah. Okay? Let's begin. Perek Aleph, Mishnah Aleph. Hopefully my voice can hold out. Mishnah Aleph, page 13. I'm not translating the Mishnah, I'm reading it, and then at the end of the Mishnah, or when necessary in the Mishnah, I will highlight the things we learned, and this will allow us to have a seder of the avodah. B'shloshim makomos hakohanim shom b'beis hamikdash, b'beis haftinas, b'beis hanitzutz, b'beis hamoked. Beis haftinas u'beis hanitzutz hayu aliyot v'harovim shomim shom. Beis hamoked kipa u'bayis godol hayu mukaf roitim shel ever v'ziknei beis av yishenim shom u'maftachos ha'azara biyadam u'pirchei kahuna ishkisto ba'aretz. Lo hayishenim b'bigdei kodesh ela poshtim u'makaplan u'manichin osam tachas v'shem u'miskasim b'chsus atzmam. The Kohanim guarded the Beis Hamikdash in 3 places. The Mishnah here doesn't talk about the Levium. We learned that in Maseches Tamid. The Levium guarded the Beis Hamikdash in 21 places. The Kohanim guarded the Beis Hamikdash in 3 places. The Levium guarded the Beis Hamikdash, the 5 gates to the Harabayas, the 4 corners of the Harabayas, 5 gates to the Azorah, 4 corners of the Azorah, that's 9 and 9 is 18, and 3 additional places, 21. The Kohanim guarded the Beis Hamikdash in 3 places. We use our Midos number 3. On the southern wall of the Azorah, there's the Beis Haftinas, and the Beis Haftinas was sort of the question of Gemara whether there was a room underneath it and an attic above it, or it was just a sort of a place built on pillars. It was basically a porch. So at any rate, the Beis Haftinas is above the level of the Azorah, and there was a Kohen that guarded here on the top of the Beis Haftinas. A second Kohen guarded in the same idea, the porch of the Beis Hanitzutz, which is on the northern wall. A third Kohen guarded inside the Beis Hamoked. The Beis Hamoked is not a porch. Here's our Beis Hamoked. Our Beis Hamoked is a large room, large room with 4 chambers, 1 in each corner, and it has a dome on top. The Kohen stood guard inside the Beis Hamoked. The Beis Hamoked is partially built in the Chayil, which is Harabayas, partially built in the Azorah. You can't sit in the Azorah unless you're a sign of the Davidic dynasty. A Kohen comes from Shevet Levi. He is not a sign of the Davidic dynasty. So he's standing guard in this northern half of the Beis Hamoked, which is Har Habayis or Chayil area, where he can sit if he gets tired during the evening. As we learned, wherever a Kohen is guarding, there's a Levi assisting him because of the mitzvah of Yilavu Lecha B'Shasucha, the Kohanim, the Levim shall assist the Kohanim. This has nothing to do with the 21 places that the Levim guarded. 21 places the Levim guarded with their places. Then there were 3 places where Kohanim guarded: Beis Haftinas, southern wall; Beis Hanitzutz, northern wall; and Beis Hamoked, also the northern wall. In each of the 3 places where the Kohen guarded, a Levi was there assisting him. The Kohen is on the top of the porch, the Levi is below, and in the Beis Hamoked, the Kohen is inside, the Levi is outside. There are 24 mishmaros. Kohanim came every 24 weeks. The mishmar is broken into a Beis Av, and there are 6 batei avot in every mishmar. And every day of the week there was a different Beis Av. On Shabbos they all got together to do the avoda. Today is Tuesday. Yesterday was, let's call this week, Reuven Mishmar. Reuven Mishmar has 6 groups. We'll call them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Reuven 1 did the avoda on Sunday. Reuven 2 did the avoda on Monday. Reuven 2 finished their avoda last night because there were still things that had to be done after sunset, which includes making sure that Evorim, Ukedorim, the fats, parts of animals were burnt on the Mizbeach from all korbanos that were brought during the day. And that is why we daven Ma'ariv for that purpose. Shachris is the korban tamid shel Shachar, Mincha is the korban tamid shel Mincha, shel Bein Arbayim, and Ma'ariv is for the Evorim, Ukedorim, the fats that have to still be consumed on the Mizbeach that the Kohanim have to take care of. So the Kohanim, Reuven 2, Reuven, we'll call it Reuven Monday. Reuven Monday didn't finish their avoda till last night. They went back into the Beis Hamoked and went to sleep. And this is what the Mishnah is talking about here. The Kohanim who finished their work on Monday took off their big day kahuna. They did not wear their big day kahuna while they were sleeping. They folded it nicely and put it next to their heads, under their heads, machlokes negamara, whether they were allowed to put the begodim under their heads or next to their heads, be that as it may. Reuven's mishmar of Monday finished last night. They went back into the Beis Hamoked and they went to sleep there. They took off their big day kahuna. They slept in their weekday clothing. Besides that, today's Kohanim, Tuesday Reuven, showed up last night in the Beis Hamoked to sleep there and be ready to start the avoda today. So we have 2 groups of Kohanim sleeping in the Beis Hamoked. Monday night, last night, the Monday Reuven Kohanim who finished their work slept in the Beis Hamoked. They already had their big day kahuna on. They took it off and went into their private clothing. The Kohanim of Reuven Tuesday arrived yesterday. They went to the Lishkas Hagazis or to Pinchas Hamalbish. Lishkas Hagazis, northern wall. There's a question of where the big day kahuna was stored. We'll learn it's Lishkas Hagazis. There's also a room called Pinchas Hamalbish at the 15 steps of Sha'ar Nicanor. On the right side, it's called Pinchas the dresser, and on the left side is where they made the 12 challahs for the Kohen Gadol Chavitim. So there's a question of where they stored the begodim in Pinchas Hamalbish or in the Lishkas Hagazis. We'll learn that they stored them at the Lishkas Hagazis. So yesterday, there are 2 sets of Kohanim sleeping. Last night, there are 2 sets of Kohanim in the Beis Hamoked. One, Reuven Monday that finished. They went into the Beis Hamoked, took off their big day kahuna, put on their weekday clothing. They went to sleep. 2, the Tuesday Reuven showed up yesterday, went to get their big day kahuna, did not put it on, but they needed the big day kahuna to be ready for Tuesday morning. And these 2 sets of Kohanim are sleeping in the Beis Hamoked. Continue Mishnah Aleph. Ewa keril echad mehem yotze v'holach lo b'masiba holeches tachas avir v'anir stop mekan mekan ad shemagil lebeis hatfila u'medura hois hasham u'beis kisei shel kavod ze haya kavodim etzol nol yored yodea sheyesh sham adam besuch yodea she'ein sham adam yored v'tava olav l'stab nischama geneged amedura bo v'yoshua eitz echad kohanim ad shasham eftachim yotze v'holach lo. This discusses the question of what to do if a Kohen became Tamid that night, how he went to the mikveh, and how he left the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, so we have our 2 sets of Kohanim sleeping in the Beis HaMoked, and it's now, today, it's Tuesday morning. Mishnah Beis. Mishu wrote Salitrum Es HaMizbeach. Kohanim of Reuven, Tuesday, some of them want to get up very early. It's going to be before dawn. They want to get up, and they want to be Zeicha to do the mitzvah of Trumas Hadeshin. They take the shovel full of ash off the top of the Mizbeach. Mashkin v'tobel ad shelo yovo hamamuna v'chibez v'shamamuna ba lo kol item shavos ponim mishubam mekriyas hageva or samach lo mufam b'malachov hamuna ba v'dofek aleim v'im posfulo amalahem mi shetobel yovo v'yofes efisu zacha mi shezacha. So now we have the Kohanim who are interested. Tuesday, Reuven, they're interested in doing the Trumas Hadeshin. They woke up very early. They went down to the mikveh that's in the Beis Hamoked. They slept in the Beis Hamoked. Okay. It's at the Beis Hamokeh, northern wall of the Azara. One of the 4 chambers on the northern side of the Beis Hamokeh had a stairway. You went down the stairway, there was a mikveh below the Beis Hamokeh. You couldn't go into the Azara unless you were toivel. So whoever was interested in the Trumas Hadeshin, the first lottery, went down, was toivel. He now has his big day kahuna. Remember, we learned there's a machlokas whether the pious was done in weekday clothing or in big day kahuna. We paskin that it was done in big day kahuna. So they got their big day kahuna on, and the Mamuna, Gebini Cruz, came knocking on the northern door of the Beis Hamokeh. Comes knocking on the northern door of the Beis Hamokeh. Remember, all the doors are locked. They had to open a door to the Harabayas to let him in, or it could be he lived on the Harabayas. At any rate, he comes, Gebini Cruz, Gebini the announcer, and he comes to the northern door of the Beis Hamokeh. He knocks and he has an announcement to make. Everybody get up for those who want to join in the lottery. Then there was a supervisor of the lottery who entered the Beis Hamokeh, according to the way we learned, and said, let's do the lottery. And we know how they did the lottery. The Mamuna picked the number 82, 72, 58, whatever it was. The Kohanim were around. He took off the hat from one of them so he knew where he started. He started counting. The Kohanim were only permitted to put out 1 or 2 fingers. They definitely were not permitted to put out a thumb for reasons we discussed. The Kohen that put out his thumb was disqualified from the lottery, and he got a couple of good pets too. Okay. We now have the winner of lottery number 1, who's going to do the Trumas Hadeshin. Now what? Mishnah Gimel. Notlas hamaftech u'posach es hapishposh. The Mamuna, the supervisor, goes to the southern door of the Beis Hamokeh. The Beis Hamokeh has an entrance from the Har Habayis, the Chayil, into the Beis Hamokeh. And then in the Beis Hamokeh, you continue to walking south, and there's another door that opens from the Beis Hamokeh into the Azara. But you're not going to open the big door. No doors are open in the Beis Hamikdash until the Heichel door right here is open, and we're not ready to open the Heichel door. The Heichel door is open when the Avoda is ready. There's no Avoda, quote unquote, to be done because it's still not day. This is before dawn. So how do you get into the Azara? So the Mishnah says there was a pishposh. We saw the picture. In the big door, how big is the door? Rabbi side. Every opening in the Beis Hamikdash is 10 by 20, 10 amos wide, 20 amos high, except the Ulam, 20 amos wide, 40 amos high. So in the door that's going into the Azara, 10 amos wide, 20 amos high, and in that door, there's a little door. They opened that little door. That's called the Pishpash. They entered the Azara, the Mamuna. So now that the southern door of the Beis Hamokeh is open, 2 groups of Kohanim with torches entered the Azara. Some of them went towards the east, some of them went towards the west. And they're looking to make sure that the Azara is in proper order, including kalim in proper places, so that the avoda can begin. So there are Kohanim leaving the Beis Hamokeh, making a left turn, so they can check this whole area. And then there are Kohanim, which is actually an exception to you must make a right turn rule. And then there are Kohanim leaving the Beis Hamokeh, making a right turn. And everyone's going to meet right here. The room called Osei Chavitin. We're going to bake the 12 challahs for the Kohen Gadol. 6 will be brought in the morning, 6 in the afternoon. The Kohanim that went to the left, the Kohanim that went to the right, they will meet right there. and they will say to each other, everything's beseder shalom, hakol shalom, all the kalim are in their proper place. Mishnah Dalet. Misha Zach Litor Mes HaMizbeach, Hu Yitor Mes HaMizbeach. The winner of Lottery 1 will do the Trumas HaDeshen, not the Hotzos HaDeshen. Remember, we said they're two different things, and that we'll get to later. We're only dealing with the winner of Lottery 1, and he's only taking a shovel full of ash off the Mizbeach. Vehem Omim Lo, he is now ready. The first set of Kohanim went into the Azorah, to the right, to the left, with the torches to check, to make sure everything is in place. Now our winner 1 is entering the Azorah, and the Kohanim say to him, Hizor Shematika Bakli, Achitikadish Yadech Raglecha Min HaKiyar. They tell him, do not touch any vessel in the Azorah until you wash from the Kiyar. And this has nothing to do with Tum and Tahara. This is simply because we're worried that he's so excited to do the avoda, he won the lottery, that he's going to rush quickly to the Mizbeach and try to do the Trumas Hadeshen. We don't want him to do that, because first we want him to wash his hands and his feet from the kir before you do the avoda. So in his excitement, he may forget. So, and remember, this is Kohanim arriving every 24 weeks. So we remind him, don't touch a vessel. This way you won't come to do some avoda. Just run, walk directly to the kiyar and start at the kiyar. And you should know that the pan that you're going to use to take the coals, the ash off the mizbeach, is on the western side of the ram. Page 14. Ein adam nichnas imo. No one can accompany the winner of Lottery 1, nor does he have a torch. He can't have a torch because he has nowhere to hold the torch. He's going to go over to the kiyar, and he's going to wash his hands and his feet. Who's going to hold the torch for him? So he can't hold the torch. Why doesn't someone accompany him to hold the torch? Because the rule is that a person, a Kohen, cannot be bein ulam la mizbeach or bein ulam la kevesh except for avoda, or tzorech avoda. And here, I should say avoda, bein ulam, here's the ulam steps, this area between the ulam and the mizbeach, and this area between the kevesh and the mizbeach, you cannot be there unless you're doing avoda, or you're proceeding to do avoda. So this Kohen who left the Beis Hamogate, our first set of Kohanim, they went all around this way. They didn't walk here. They turned left. The other Kohanim turned right. They didn't walk in this area. Our Kohen, who is going to do the Trumas Hadeshen, is going to walk to the Kiyar. The Kiyar is here. He must walk here. Therefore, he can't be accompanied by another Kohen holding a torch, because holding a torch is not an avoda. And you can't be in this whole area unless you're doing avoda. No choice but for our winner of Lottery 1 to walk to the Mizbeach, to walk to the Kiyar and do the Trumas Hadeshen without a torch. And whatever fire was still on the Mizbeach, that's the amount of light he had to wash at the Kiyar and to do the Trumas Hadeshen. You couldn't hear or see winner number 1. Okay, so we learned about the pulley system then that Ben Katan made, so that the water in the kiyar would not have, the leftover water at night would not have to be poured out because of Lena. And therefore, they were able to use a pulley system and take the kiyar and sink it into a mikveh. And then in the morning, it got lifted up. So our winner of lottery number 1, in order to use the kiyar, he has to lift it out of the bore, out of the pit. And he's going to crank up that pulley. And that tremendous noise was heard. And the Kohanim that are still in the Lishkas, in the Beis Hamoked, or those who are in the Lishkas Hagazis, depending upon what sheet you hold from, They now knew that he's about to wash his hands and his feet. They heard the pulley. And then they said to each other, the time has come, we need to get ready to leave the base Hamoke and get ready to assist in the Avodah. Kiddush Yodav Raglam and Akir Natal Machtas HaKesef Ola Rosh HaMizbeach Upinis HaGacholam Helach VeHelach Chosam and Umukolos HaPnimis V'yorad. Higia LeRitzpa Hofach Ponav Latzofan Holach LeMizrach Shel Kevesh Kesef Amos Tzovas Gacholam Al Gabi HaRitzpa Roch Ben HaKevesh Lo Shtvachim Mokem Shnois Nemuras Ha'or Fedish Mizbeach Apnimi B'Menorah. The Kohen, win the lottery won, went up to the Mizbeach after he washed his hands and his feet, took a machta of ash off the Mizbeach, came back down the ramp, turned to the north. Remember, the Mizbeach is going south to north, and he put the ash on the eastern side of the ramp at a certain measurement, as the Mishnah says, and this was the base Hadeshen. This is the place where the winner 3 of Lottery 2, who cleaned the Mizbeach Ketores, and winner 4 of Lottery 2, who cleaned the menorah. They took their ash, their wicks, they poured it on the base Hadeshen. It's in your diagram 3 of Midos. It's on the eastern side of the ramp, base Hadeshen. Okay. Perek Beis. Mishnah Aleph. Ra'u Echav Sheyorad. We have a lot of Kohanim now in the Azorah. They heard Ben Katan's Muchni up. The winner number 1 has done the Dishun, the Trumas Hadeshen, and now the Kohanim see that he's come down the ramp, and he's done the Trumas Hadeshen. They now ran into the Azorah to begin their jobs. Some of them had These other Kohanim went up the ramp to the top of the Mizbeach. Some of them had like shovels and some of them had pitchforks. The ones that had shovels took the remaining ash that was on top of the Mizbeach and they put it in the middle of the Mizbeach, and that became what we now know is the Tapuah, the gathering of ash in the middle of the Mizbeach. We've seen the diagrams of it. It's in the middle of the Mizbeach, and there's still animal parts that may have not been fully consumed from yesterday. They took pitchforks, removed them, and put them in the middle of the Mizbeach or on the ramp, on the sovev of the ramp or on the ramp, according to some shittas. At any rate, the top of the Mizbeach is now clean. The center has the gathering of the ash, the tapuach, the ma'arachos, the logs that were set there yesterday are now ash clean. The animal parts are removed, and now the top of the Mizbeach is ready for new logs. Mishnah Beis. So we have the ones with the pitchforks put the parts of the animal to the middle of the Mizbeach or on the ramp. And now the ones with the shovels shovel the ash to the tapuach. The tapuach hayab emtza mizbeach pamolav kishlosh me'os kor uvergom lo hayab medashno some neishu noyla mizbeach miyamav lo nesatza kamal hotzeis hadoshen, and they would every day clean the top of the mizbeach and put the ash on the tapuach. Our sheet is that the tapuach was removed only as necessary with the pesach ter, that huge bowl. We saw a picture of it. Huge bowl. They put the ash in this huge bowl. A Kohen stood at the top of the Mizbeach with one rope, and the other Kohen stood at the bottom of the ramp holding the other side of the rope, and they slowly lowered it down as necessary. They didn't do this every day. Trumas Hadeshen, winner lottery 1, a shovel full of ash removed every day. That's Trumas Hadeshen. Hotzaos Hadeshen is only when the tapuach got full. The Rambam Shita, as we mentioned, is that Hotzaos Hadeshen was done every day as well. On Yom Tif, they didn't do Trumas Hadeshen. at all. I'm sorry, they didn't do Hotzos Hadeshin at all. I'm sorry, I cannot answer questions. We're trying to move through the Avoda. On Yontif, they did not do the Hotzos Hadeshin at all, and it was a Noi Lamizbeach. This was a beautiful thing for the Yidden who were Ola Regel to see. This is a busy Beis Hamikdash. There were a lot of karbonis on this Mizbeach. And they saw the tapuach full with ash in the middle, and so they waited till after Yontif to clean it. It's a Noi Lamizbeach. It's beautiful to see a holy thing being used. A holy thing that's in a cabinet and locked that no one takes out to use is not getting the covet it deserves. So on Yontif, Chalamoy, they didn't clean it so everybody can see the tapuach. Mishnah Gimel. Heichelu malu begizum l'sadar eish hamaracha. And now other Kohanim begin bringing logs to the Mizbeach. And our winner number one is going to set up the logs. But there are other Kohanim that are going to bring the logs from the Lishkas HaEitzim, from the room where the Eitzim was stored. And there's a question how they got to the Mizbeach. But if you remember diagram number 3 in our Ezras Noshim, one of the 4 chambers in the Ezras Noshim, right here, Lishkas HaEitzim. That's where the logs were. How did these logs get to the Mizbeach? That's a question. But they got logs to the Mizbeach through many Kohanim. Once the logs got to the Mizbeach, our winner number 1 set them up on the Mizbeach. V'chi kol ha'eitzim ksherim la'arocha, and kol ha'eitzim ksherim l'ma'arocha, chutz mishel zayis v'shel gefen, aval be'elu region b'mubiyah shel te'enu shel eges v'shel eit shaman. All types of wood are okay to use on the ma'arocha, except we don't use wood that comes from an olive tree or wood that comes from a grapevine. And we learned about that. Mishum Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. Olives and grapes are so central to farming and agriculture in Eretz Yisrael. Even to cut them down, to use their wood on the Mizbeach, we do not do that. Don't touch the vines, don't touch the olive trees. So what did they then? They can use any wood other than those 2, but the minhag became to use murbio shel te'ena, fig type of egos, and eit shemen, a type of nut, and something called eit shemen. That's what they generally use for the ma'arocha gedola. There are 3 ma'arachos on top of the Mizbeach, ma'arocha gedola for animal consumption, ma'arocha shel ketoris to create fire and bring that coal and fire into the heichel to burn the ketoris, and then there's the ma'arocha kiyum ha'esh. So now the Mishnah is going to go to the ma'arocha. We're going to go to the other marachos. Mishnah Dalet. Tzita maracha gedola misracha. The maracha gedola for consumption of animals was on the southeastern side of the Mizbeach. If you go to diagram number 3, the maracha gedola, you can see a big set of logs is southeast. This is east. This is west. Southeast is a large set of logs. Southwest, right here, you're going to have the smaller set of logs, which is to create coals for the ketoris. In the middle, you have the tapuach, and then you have kiyum ha'esh. So we're now in Mishnah Dalet. Tzida maracha gedola mizracha. The maracha gedola was southwest of the chazita mizracha, and they left a space when they set up the logs. It was like lahav the Lincoln logs, but at one point in the eastern side of the logs, they left like a window, an opening, so that the wind can blow through from the eastern side of the Harabayas, through the Ezras Noshim, through the Shar Nicanor, onto the Mizbeach, and this would give oxygen so that the fire can ignite. The innermost logs of wood would touch that middle of the Mizbeach tapuach. There was space between the gizim. We mentioned it was put on horizontal, vertical, went in the different directions, and that left space between horizontal, vertical, probably not correct. It went in and out, in and out, in and out, and that left space between the logs. Show you matzisen es alisa misham, and that's where they put in the alisa. That's where they were able to ignite the fire in these spaces. Mishnah Hey, ber misham atze te'ena yafin lasader hamarocha shniya lakatoris mikeneged keren marobis deromus moshuk min hakeren klapetzofen abba omo. They now prepared our winner number 1 has logs to prepare the second marocha, which is southwest. The purpose of that marocha is only to create a fire from which coals can be taken into the heichal upon which the ketoris will be burned. And for this marocha, they were makbid to use wood that came from a fig tree. Why? We mentioned Rashi, Zavochin, Dafnun Ches Amid Beis. After the Chet of Adam Harishon realized he's naked with Chava, and they took Ale Te'en, leaves from a fig tree, and they covered their private parts. And the Avera, one of the Averas of the Eitz Hadas Torah was that Adam and Chava were makabel lashon hara on God. The Nachash said, if you eat from this tree, you can be God, you can become God, because God ate from this tree, and that's how he was able to create the world. And they accepted this lashon hara, and they ate from the tree. Lashon hara, one of the things that's machaper on lashon hara is ketores, and since the Avera of Adam Harishon was lashon hara, and the way he tried to cover himself after the Avera was with atzei te'ena, and ketores is machaper on lashon hara, so therefore they were makbid to use atzei te'ena for the wood of the marocha shel ketores, upon which fire was going to be taken into the heichal, and the ketores is going to be burned on this wood, this fig wood. So it's a kapara, so to speak, for the chet of Adam Harishon. Ba'omed chomesh se'im kecholim, u'b'Shabbos ba'omed shmona se'im kecholim, a certain measurement of coals you needed to burn the incense, and you needed more coal on Shabbos. Shesham hayu nosim shnei bezich levona shalech mapanim. On the table, the shulchan, which is in the heichal. In the heichal, we have the mizbeach. On the northern wall, we have the shulchan. On the southern wall, we have the menorah. The lechem aponim was baked on Friday. It was put on the shulchan Shabbos afternoon. The lechem that was there already for the past 9 days was removed and given out to the kohanim hot, as if it were just freshly baking. But on the table, on the shulchan, there were 2 baziche, 2 cups that had levona in it, and that was burned Shabbos in the afternoon. So you needed additional coals. First of all, on Shabbos, you needed coals from the marocha of Ketores to take into the heichal to burn the daily incense, and then you needed additional coals to remain on the outer mizbeach, because those 2 cups of levona that were on the shulchan were going to be brought out to be burned on the mizbeach hachitzon. So on Shabbos, the marocha of Ketores is going to have some coals, fire brought into the heichal. Some coals remain on the outer mizbeach, and these 2 cups of levona will be burned Shabbos afternoon. Therefore, you needed more wood, more logs for the marocha shel ketores on Shabbos. Now, remember, we took off the fats, the limbs of the carbonos that were not consumed yesterday. We removed them to the middle of the mizbeach so that we can clean the rest of the mizbeach. Now, what do we do with those animal parts? Now that we have a new marocha, gedolas on the southeastern corner of the mizbeach, we take those animal parts with the pitchforks, we put them back on the marocha gedola. Our winner of lottery 1 now lit the 2 marochas. The kohanim who were working in the azara, they were bringing logs to the mizbeach, whatever they were doing. Our winner number 1 is basically done. The only thing he's still going to do is what? he has the mitzvah of Shnei Gezirei Eitzim, which the Mishnah doesn't discuss for some reason. The Mefarshim talk about it. There's an additional two, it's really boards, an Amma by an Amma, that the Kohen of winner lottery 1 took these two boards and threw them on the fire after they were lit. Once he does that, he lit the fire, he threw the Shnei Gezirei Eitzim, he has now done his job. Perek Gimel. We're now up to the second. We're up to the second lottery. Amalem Amuna Bo Bafisu. Mishochet Mizorek Mibedashin Uzbech Apnimi Mibedashin Es Hamnova Mimale Vom Lakevesh Harosh Varegel Shteradayim Haoketz Varegel Achoz Vagerish Litfonis Hakrovayim Vasolas Vachavita Vayayin Efisu Zacha Misha Zacha. Lottery number 2 in the Lishkas Hagozis. There are going to be 13 winners. The first announced winner is the Shochet. The second one is the Zorek. And then the winner 3 of lottery 2 is who's going to clean the Mizbeach, Haktoris, and the Hegel. Winner number 4 is who's going to clean the menorah in 2 phases, 5 sticks and 2 sticks. And then our next 9 winners are going to bring different things to the ramp. 6 Kohanim bring parts of the animal. 3 Kohanim, the last 3, bring the soles, the flour offering. The 6 chalos that are going to be used for the mincha of the Kohen, the chavitin, 6 in the morning, 6 in the afternoon, and who's going to bring the flask of wine to the kevesh. So we have 13 winners. Number 82 is going to be the shochet. To his right is the zorek. To his right is the cleaner of the mizbeach. To his right is going to be the cleaner of the menorah, etc. We now have our 13 winners. And now what's the next thing we're going to do? Mishnah base. Amalem HaMamuna. The Mamuna said to him, this is another supervisor. We're going to see all the supervisors will be introduced to them in Masechet Shkolim and Yetz Hashem. Go check, is it time yet that we can check the animal? Remember, all this until now, the way we learn the Mishnah has been going on before dawn. And now we want to move on. We just had the lottery, and we have a winner who's going to check, splash the blood, and who's going to bring the animal parts. So, are we ready to shecht? Amalem Hamamuna, the supervisor said, he told 2 Kohanim, go outside and see how much daylight there is outside. They went to a high point. One of them went to a high point of the Beis Hamikdash and looked into the sky. Another one remained in the Azora and was waiting for a signal. Im Higia, Hara Omer Bakai. If it was time, enough light in the sky to begin the Shechita, the person who was looking said the word Bakai. It's shining. I can see light. We don't paskin like this because light would mean it's dawn. It's Amar HaShachar, and we didn't begin the avodah at Amar HaShachar. We paskin like the next Shita, Masi ben Shmuel, Omer Masi ben Shmuel holds that the avodah began approximately, give or take, 70 minutes or so later. He's looking for something near Netzachama. He's not looking for dawn. He's looking for something near sunrise. So Masir ben Shmuel says, Omer, Heir Pnei Kol HaMizrach. The person who was standing at this high point in the Azora says the whole east is now lit, which means it's basically sunrise. Ad Shehu B'Chevron. The person who was standing below who said back to him, do you see enough light that Chevron is lit? V'hu Omer Hen. And the person at this high point says, yes, there's enough light in Chevron. And this is how we paskin. What is this business to this question? Is there enough light in Chevron? We mentioned, because before we start the avodah, we want to say the word Chevron to remind us of the city of Chevron, Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Leah, and of course Rachel in Beit Lechem. We want to remember the Ovos and Imois before we begin the avodah. So this is the exchange of words. There's enough light. Is there enough light in Chevron? Yes. Now we're ready. Mishnah Gimel. The supervisor said, go to the Lishkas Hatloyim and get me a sheep. Lishkas Hatloyim, go to your diagram number 3, base Hamoke. There are 4 rooms in the Beis Hamoked, 2 on the northern side, which are in the Chayil part, and 2 which are on the southern side were on the Azara part. And right there, you have written in Tloyim. In Lishkas HaTloyim, there was a minimum of 6 sheep in there, and we've discussed then why we need 6. Minimum of 6 sheep that had been inspected 4 days before a carbon Tamid. 4 days before the carbon Tamid is brought, it had to be inspected to make sure there was no mum. We talked about there were 2 sheep, whether it had to be inspected every day for 4 days until Shechita, or it had to be inspected the day it was purchased, which would have to be 4 days before it was going to be used, and then right before it was shechted. So there's a machlokas. But when you purchased an animal, when the treasurer of the Beis Hamikdash purchased an animal, he brought it to the Lishkas HaTloyim. They put some kind of note on it or sticker, whatever they did, with the date it was bought. They inspected it, and they now knew what date they would be able to bring this animal on, because they dated the animal. They knew when 4 days had passed. So the Mamuna says, bring me a tlef from the Lishkas HaTloyim. Follow Lishkas HaTloyim, Hayvid Mitzayit, Spoinus Marobis. The Lishkas HaTloyim was the northwest corner of the Beis Hamoked. For Abba L'Shakas Hayusham, there were 4 rooms in the Beis Hamoked. Achas Lishkas HaTloyim, Vachas Lishkas HaChosomas, Vachas Lishkas Beis Hamoked, Vachas Lishkas Sha'oisem Bolech Mapanim. Mishnah Dalet. Next thing, the Kohanim went into a room. We're not sure where this is. It's the room of the vessels. We need to get all the vessels now. It's sunrise. We're ready to do the avoda, and we need all the vessels so that we can do the avoda in a systematic way, chit-chat, without having to yell at each other. I'm missing of this, I'm missing of that. So the Kohanim went into the Lishkas HaKelim, Hotziim Misham Tishu Shloshet Pekesev Blezov. They took out 93 gold and silver vessels, and these gold and silver vessels were put on the silver table. There were 2 tables. We learned about this yesterday. There were 2 tables on the western side of the ramp. 1 table was made out of silver, and they put these 93 vessels on the top of the silver table. The other table was made out of marble, and that's where they put the fats of private karbanos so that they wouldn't ruin. Why 93? Yushalmi says, the Rambam brings it down because Hashem's name is mentioned 93 times in the books of Chagi, Zachariah, Malachi, the 3 last Nevi'im, who lived at the beginning of the Sefer Beis Hamikdash and assisted in understanding how to build a Beis Hamikdash. So in tribute to them, they used 93 vessels, and the 93 vessels are on the western side of the ramp on the silver table. We now have the animal near the Mizbeach. What do we do now? They took a golden bowl and they let the animal drink water from the golden bowl. Why gold if it's an animal drinking from it? So this is where we come with the concept of Ein Aniyus B'Mokem Ashiris. In the Beis Hamikdash, it's a palace. We don't show poverty or cheapness in a palace. Now, we've talked many times about the flip side of Ein Aniyus B'Mokem Ashiris, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu Chasam B'Monim Shel Yisrael. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us not to spend money when we don't have to, and therefore different parts of the Beis Hamikdash didn't have gold walls, etc. These are 2 different concepts. Here they took a gold bowl. This gold bowl is one of the 93 vessels, and they let the animal drink water, the sheep drink water. Chazal tell us that by hydrating the animal, it was easier then to remove the skin of the hide of the animal after shechita. Even though the animal had been inspected the night before, nevertheless that morning they take torches. Remember, it's just sunrise. There's not a lot of light. They took torches and they checked the animal again to make sure there's no moon. Mishnah Hey. Misha Zocha Batamid Moshe V'Hochel Beis Hamikdash. Misha Zocha Beivorm Holchen Achara. Who is the one that brought the sheep from the Lishkas HaTloyim? The winner 1 of lottery 2. He's going to be the shochet. So he brings the animal, and the other 6 Kohanim who won the lottery that are going to take parts to the ram, they follow after him, because these are the 7 Kohanim that are going to deal with the animal. the shochet, and of course there's the zorek, and the kohanim who eventually are going to take the parts of this animal to the kevish. They walk with him and they bring the animal to the Beis HaMikvahim. Where's the Beis HaMikvahim? Diagram number 3. 24 rings in the ground of the Azara, one for each mishmar. And the animal's head was placed inside. The 6 Kohanim were able to hold him down. We're not ready for Shechita, we're just describing what happened. And there were 24 rings, one for each mishmar. The Shechita was always opposite the sun. So in the morning, the sun is in the south. They use a western ring. In the afternoon, the sun was in the west. They used an eastern ring to demonstrate that they're not shechting towards the sun. Beis HaMikvahim, the Beis HaMikvahim, where they slaughtered the animal, was north of the Mizbeach. This is just describing the northern area of the Azara. Here are the rings, and here are those special tables and the special, pillars. The pillars upon which there were hooks. They were able to take the hide off the animals, and then there were tables upon which they washed the inside of the animal. This is just descriptive. That's where the animal is. We're not shechting anything yet. Mishnah Vav. Misha Zacha B'Dishim Mizbeach Hapnimi V'Amnora Hoyu Makdimim. The winner of number 3 of lottery 2, who's going to clean the Mizbeach Haktoris, and winner 4 of lottery 2, who's going to clean the menorah, they went in to the Heichel. But how do they get into the Heichel? No doors are open yet. Abba Kalim Biyadam, they have 4 vessels or 4 different things that they're holding to. Hateni Vakuz, the teni is the big basket that winner number 3 is going to carry to clean off the Mizbeach HaTorah from yesterday's ash. The kuz is sort of a cup that winner number 4 is going to hold to put the oil and the wicks from menorah into. Ushnei maftachos, and they also had 2 keys because they're going to have to open the heichel. Hateni dom letakav gadol shel zav, machzek kabayim v'chetzi, v'akuz dom lekivim gadol shel zav, ushnei maftachos, echad yoreh lamas hashechi, v'echad posech kivan. They're in the door of the heichel. They're going towards the heichel. They're going to go into the ulam. And when they get to the door of the heichel, there's the huge door, 20 amos high, 10 amos wide, but they didn't directly open the door. On the right side and the left side of the big door to the heichel, there was a pishposh. This is not a pishposh like in the Beis Hamoke. The Beis Hamoke pishposh was a door, small door in the big door. This is separate doors. One is to the right and one is to the left of the big door. The Kohen, these 2 Kohanim have keys. One of them is going to take a key. There was a lock that was on the inside of the door, and there was a little hole at the bottom of the door. He was able to stick his arm into the door till his armpit, bent his arm down and opened the lock from the inside. That's one lock. Another lock was at normal height. He opened it up. Where is he now? He's in the teh. He's in a compartment. He's gone through the northern small door. He's in the teh. From the teh, he's going to enter the Azara. He's now inside the Azara, and he's going to open the doors of the heichel to the inside of the heichel. The doors of the heichel will be then open. Mishnah Zayin, Bolol Pishpish Hatzfoni, which we just talked about, he came to the northern little door, Shnei Pishposhim Harlo Shah Godel, Echa Batzachim, Echa Badorum, Shabadom, Nechus Bamod Adam Olam, Bolol from Mufusha, Yecheska, Vayemer Lai Hashem, Ashar Zog, Yeh Lo Yipasech, Mish Lo Yavavo, Ki Hashem Lo Ke Yisrael Vo Bahoy Sogo. The Kohen, these 2 Kohanim, winner 3 and winner 4, are going to go through the little door on the northern side. The little door on the southern side was never open. The word never, never say never. We talked about it when we learned these psukim in Yecheskel. They were open, and for example, as Machlokes, it was open for Kohen Gadol, or was open for Mashiach, B'meher Yomeinu. It was open on Shabbos, it was open on Rosh Chodesh. So never open doesn't mean never ever open. For our purposes, it means that the Kohen who wanted to open the Heichel doors never walked through the southern Pishpash. He always walked through the northern Pishpash. עד שמגיע לשער הגודל, הגיע לשער הגודל, העבר את הנגב, את הפויסס ופסחוי, לא ישייכת השייכת עד ששמר כל שער הגודל שנפתח. Nothing happened until the Heichel doors were opened from the inside, because in order to do the avodah, in order to shech the carbon has to be, if you look at diagram 3, the ulam is a curtain, the curtains are open, the heichel, the doors must be open, because the mizbeach must be facing the open doors. Pesach Oel Moed, the pasuk says. So we're not going to do anything in terms of shechita until we have the heichel doors open, and then all the other doors of the Beis Hamikdash will be open. Lo hayashochet hashochet ad sheshamer kol shahar gol shaniftach. The shochet did not do anything at all until he hears the great door of the Heichel open. It made noise. It was a big door. Shochet didn't do anything. Mishnah Ches. We're not doing anything now. The Mishnah is now just describing things that happened in Yericho. 10 miracles. In Yericho, they heard the big Heichel doors opening in the morning. The magrefa is that musical instrument that they threw on the ground. In Yericho, they heard when the winner of lottery 1, pulled up the kior from the bar. They heard that pulling all the way in Yericho. Gabini Cruz. In Yericho, you were able to hear Gabini Cruz saying at the Beis Hamokeh, time to wake up, everyone. In Yericho, you were able to hear the flutes of the Levium when they played Shira. In Yericho, they heard the cymbals. Ben Arza, remember, we learned yesterday, had cymbals. You were able to hear the cymbals. You heard the Shira Levium. In Yericho, they heard the sound of the shofar blast in the Beis Hamikdash. We're not talking about Rosh Hashanah. And some say they were able to hear in Yericho the Kohen Gadol when he said Yud Kei Vav Kei An Yom Kippur. In Yericho, they were able to smell the Ketores. Amar B'Elazar ben Deglai, Izim Hoyle Beis Abba HaMichvah Misachis Me'er Pit Maktores. Mishnah test. No shechita. We're going back to the avoda. No shechita. We have 2 kohanim that are in the heichal. One of them went in as winner 3, lottery 2 to clean the Mizbeach HaKtoros. One of them went in there as winner 4 of lottery 2 to clean the menorah. Misha Zacha Benisha Mizbeach Avnimi Nichnas Not Lateni Venicha Lefana Vaychayf V'Nis L'Secha Achroinai Kibed Es Hashar L'Socho V'Nicho V'Yatza Misha Zacha Benisha Menorah Nichnas Amach Shnei Neres Misorkim Dolkin. So our winner number 3, he had a little pan with him. He cleaned off the ash from the top of the Mizbeach HaKtoros. He put it in his tenny. What was left on the Mizbeach, he then shoveled off with his hands and put in his tenny, and he left the tenny there. Now, the person, winner 4, is going to start cleaning out the menorah. Nichnas u'matzah shnei noros mizurchayim dolken, mitashna she'ar menichs elu dolken mekomo mitzom shekavim, mitashna blikim min adolken, raka mitashim es hashar. We learned about this several times. The 2 phases we learned out from a pasuk. First, he cleaned out the 5 western sticks. Then he stopped. And then they did the shechita and the zerika according to Abba Shaul. And then he cleaned out the last 2. And there was a question, what happens if he found the first 2 extinguished? What happens if he found the first 2 were already lit? Different ways that he did it. At any rate, he cleaned out the menorah. In between 5 and 2, there was the shechita, winner 1, lottery 2, the zerika, winner 2, lottery 2, and then he finished cleaning the last 2 sticks of the menorah. and there were 3 steps that we saw that were in front of the menorah. The Kohen stood on this and cleaned out the menorah. And winner 4 left his kuz, this cup that had the oil and the wick in it, on the 2nd step, and he also left. Winner 3 did not do a hishtachavaya because he left his gold basket with the ash in it. Winner number 4 did not do a hishtachavaya because he's not finished either. First of all, he didn't finish cleaning the menorah, and he left his kuz on the 2nd step. Okay. Perek Dalet, Mishnah Aleph. I'm going to read Mishnah Aleph and Mishnah Beis very quickly. This deals with how they tied down or didn't tie down different shitas, how the animal was restrained during shechita, and then the Mishnah goes through, I'm just going to read it, all the different animal parts. Which is what I mentioned. In the morning, they shechted the korban on a ring that was facing west, opposite the sun. In the afternoon, when the sun is in the west, they use an eastern ring. The shechita is over, then you have winner 2 of lottery 2, who is makabel. He collects the blood, not from the floor, he collects it right from the animal's neck. He collects it into a vessel. Bolu lakem mizrachas safonis, he came to the northeastern corner of the Mizbeach, nosim mizrachas safona, narovis the Romas, and then he came to the opposite corner, which is southwest. So he is northeast and southwest. He stood at 2 opposite corners of his back. He splashed the blood only twice at the corner. So at the northeast corner, he splashed it in such a way that the blood went north and east and hit 2 sides of the mizbeach. He went to the opposite corner, which is southwest, splashed once, so it hit the south side and the west side, so 4 sides of the mizbeach at dam. The rest of the dam he poured at the yesod, the foundation, the southern foundation of the mizbeach, where there was a place, a hole for the blood to go in. Then the blood went from under the mizbeach to the floor of the azara. There was an amma, there was a waterway in the azara. The blood went into the waterway, mixed in there, and then it went outside. And then people wanted to buy this blood, mixed blood water for fertilizer, and you had to pay the treasurer of the Beis HaMikdash for that mixture. Mishnah Beis. This is just the animal parts. Milmal, not as a crime, so Mish Zakabem Ladichan, like Kevis Medichan, I said the base Medichan called Sarka. Akrovai Medichan is a Shlosh Pam Bemut al Shulchan Shashash Bein Amudim. Mishnah Gimel, Nautilus Hasakin, Vifrishes Haream in a covet, Hakovet, Menakovet, Lohim, Azizim Kaima. Nakaves Hachazim, so Mish Zakaboy, all of Dave Naimanis, Chaisech, Vigorid, and a Shidra Loy Magia, Shidrak Magia, the state Slois, Rakas Hasakum, so Mish Zakaboy, Hakovet, Loy Boy, Bola, Lagavi, Nirba, state Slois, Mikan. ושתי צלויס מכאן, חסוך מסלם מי שזוכר בו, הקונה בלב הרד, תלויים בו בו לדף הסמולס, מניח בו שתי צלויס רקס ממיילון, ושתי צלויס רקס ממתן, ככה אם מניח בחבר את הבניצה, מניח בשתיים, שתיים ומעל, שתיים ומתן, חתוך מסלם מי שזוכר בו. והשדרה אימא, והתחול תולי בו, ויועס גדולה, אלא של יבין קורן גדולה, אשר קורא תלוי בו, בו לקץ חסך מסלם מי שזוכר בו. ואי בו אצבע הכובד ושתי צלויס מיינות לו רגל השמאלי, מסלם מי שזוכר בו. נמצאו חלום אינם בשיעור בו ביד הראשון בראש, okay? Harishon Rosh Regel. The first of the 6 Kohanim has the head and the right leg. Harosh Bimino V'Chogmo Klav Yisrael V'Kana Bein Etzbosa Bein Shchitasim U'Malan V'Apede Nosen Aleh V'Regel Shel Yemin B'Smolo U'Beis Orlachutz Hasheni Kohen 2 of the 6 Kohanim B'Shtei Yadayim. He has the 2 front legs of the animal. Shel Yemin B'Minam Shel Shmol B'Shmolo Beis Orlachutz Hashlishi, the 3rd of the 6 Kohanim. But Oketz Uvaregel, he has the tail and the left leg. Ha'oket tzviminu va'al b'dilas bein etzbos of etzba kol sheiklois ima harega shel smol b'smol b'eis oil of Havi, the fourth of the six kohanim, ha'chos b'chos b'gever, the chest of the animal and the throat. Ha'chos b'minu v'gever b'smoil of etzaliseh bein etzboisa. Ha'chamishi, the fifth of the six kohanim, b'shtei defonos, he has the two sides of the animal, shel yimin b'inino shel smol b'smolo, u'beis oil lachutz. Hashishi, the six of the kohanim who are carrying animal parts to the rear, Akravayim hanasunim b'bozeh, the insides of the animal that are in a pot, u'kra'ayim al gabel u'malo. Those are the six kohanim who took animal parts to the rear. The first four were winner one, the shrita, winner two, the zrika, winner three, the cleaning of the mizbeach ha'niri, winner four, the cleaning of the menorah. Now we had six kohanim who are carrying animal parts to the lower part of the ram. We have three more winners of the 13. Hashvi'i, the seventh Kohen, Basoles, he's going to bring the flour mixed with oil to the ram. Hashmini, the eighth of the 9, B'chavit, he's going to bring 6 of the 12 chalos, the chavitim, to the mizbeach, to the kebesh. Hachiv hayayin, the 9th one is bringing the wine. These 9 kohanim, actually 8 of the kohanim took their parts, their items, brought it to the northern side of the ram, the lower half of the ram on the western side, the lower half of the ram, western side. Malachim, they salted them. There was salt on the kevesh there ready, and they salted them. They did not salt the wine. So number 9 didn't salt the wine. The 8 of them salted their different items. They all left and went back to the northern wall of the Azorim where the Lishkas HaGozes is. Likros Shema, they're ready to do an abridged davening. Parakeh, Mishnah Aleph. Amalem Amamuna, the supervisor now said to them, Baruch Hu Brach Achas, it's time to make one bracha. There are 2 brachas that we say before Kriya Shema, Yotzei HaMa'oros and Ahava Rabbah. They only said Ahava Rabbah. It was still too early for Yotzei HaMa'oros, the creator of light, and so they waited till say Yotzei HaMa'oros later. Right now they're saying Ahava Rabbah. V'hein Baruch Hu. Koru Aseres Hadvarim, they read the Aseres Hadibros, which we don't do. We don't do this anymore. We don't read Aseres Hadibros during davening. They did. Shema, V'hoyim Shema, V'yomer, they read the 3 parshas of Kriya Shema. Berachos Shalosh brachas, they said 3 blessings. This has nothing to do with Duchning. They said 3 brachas with the people who were congregated in the Beis HaMikdash. They said Emes V'yatziv, the bracha after Kriya Shema, which ends Gal Yisrael. V'avoda, they said V'tzei Hashem Elokeinu B'amcha Yisrael, which is a very short Shemona Esrei, Birkas Kohanim, and they said the psukim of Birkas Kohanim without lifting their hands. Remember, they're in the Lishkas Hagozes. Nobody can see them. They just said the 3 psukim of Birkas Kohanim. This is not Duchning. Duchning will take place later on the steps of the Ulam. On Shabbos afternoon, where that week's Mishmar is finished and a new Mishmar is going to start. So the Mishmar that finished would give a blessing to the Mishmar that came in and said, Misha Shichem Shmo B'bayis Hazeh, Uyashkim B'neichem Ahav Akrishon B'reis. The God who lives in this building, he should allow peace and tranquility to be amongst you. Remember, they're coming every 24 weeks, and there can be fights about who does what. After all, if you don't get to do it, you may not get to do it for 24 weeks. So the Mishmar that finished its work blessed the incoming Mishmar and said, the God who resides and lives in this house, may he bless you that there be peace and tranquility as you do the Avodah. Perek, Mishnah based. Amalahem. So now the Mamuna says, Chadoshim Laktoris Bo Ba'afisu. We're ready for the 3rd lottery. The 3rd lottery is who is going to do the Ketoris. And he said, Chadoshim Laktoris. New people. If you've ever done the Ketoris, do not come here. You only do a Ketoris once in a lifetime. You can do it more than once if your base are finished and they have to go, the rotation needs to start again. The Gemara says that never happened. So the Mamuna said, new people, come join for the Ketores lottery. Ketores Baruch Hashem Chelo, the Gemara says, special blessing for one who does the Ketores. And therefore only new Kohanim were given the opportunity, so that everyone would have the opportunity to get the blessing. Efisu Zacha Misha Zacha. You have a winner of lottery 3. He is going to bring the Ketores. Chadashim Yishanim Bo Efisu. Now the supervisor made a new announcement. Old people doesn't mean old. It means people who have already done avoda and people who have never done the avoda. Everyone can join. In contradistinction to lottery 3, where it's only new people, lottery 4 is if you've done it, you've never done it, you can join now. What is lottery 4 about? Which Kohen is going to bring the 9 items that were left on the ramp? Who's going to bring them to the top of the ramp? Rashi holds this is just one winner to lottery 4. One is going to bring all 9 to the top of the ramp. Mentioned the Ritva holds for reasons we discussed then. It may be 6 or 9 new Kohanim that bring these items to the top of the Mizbeach. Rabbi Los Ben Yaakov, Amali Rom Lakevish, Ramala Isam Agam Mizbeach. We don't pass Rabbi Les Ben Yaakov. Rabbi Les Ben Yaakov says that the 9 Kohanim who won lottery 2 that brought the items to the ramp, the same 9 at this point will bring them up to the Mizbeach. Then what is lottery 4? There have to be 4 lotteries, only in the morning, not in the afternoon. What is lottery 4 according to Rabbi Les Ben Yaakov? Rabbi Ben Yaakov says lottery number 4 is for a winner who is going to take coals from the outer Mizbeach, bring them to the inner Mizbeach, upon which winner 3 can put the incense. We hold that the 4th lottery was who's going to bring the items up to the Mizbeach. Well, then who is going to bring the coals from the outer Mizbeach to the inner Mizbeach? It's the Kohen who stood to the right side of winner number 3. Mishnah Gimel, Mesom Lechazonim. Now we have done all the 4 lotteries. There are Kohanim that wouldn't win anything, and they're not going to be doing any of the specific avoda. There are other things that they could have done, like bringing logs to the Mizbeach, but the official avoda for the Korban Tamid has been given out. So Mesom Lechazonim, these Kohanim who didn't win anything were then given over to like Shamoshim. And they removed their big day kahuna in a certain way, as we mentioned, and the big day kahuna were then put in the chalonos, in those closets. There were 24 closets in the Lishkas Hagazis. Each closet had 4 compartments because a Kohen Hedyot had 4 different garments. And each closet had 4 compartments so that the begadim were put all girdles in one compartment, all robes in one compartment, all hats in one compartment, all pants in another compartment, in order. So as the Rambam tells us, there are 96 compartments, 24 closets. Each closet has 4 compartments, 24 times 4, 96. There are 96 compartments. Mishnah Dal, page 18. Misha Zocha Bakteris Hayinoitlas Akaf Toim Latak Golish Zom Maxik Shloish Kapim Vabosach Hay Besayim Oliver Godish Katarski Soilai Uchmim Tutelis Haya Olav Mamalan. There are 2 different vessels that deal with the Ketoris. Our winner number 3 went to the southern side of the Azora. Beis Avtinas were the professionals. They knew how to deal with the Ketoris. Diagram 3, Beis Avtinas. The winner of lottery 3 went to Beis Avtinas. In Beis Avtinas, they gave him a bazach. It was a cup that had the Ketoris filled to the top, and even above that, it was a mound. On top of that, there was a cap. This cup and cap were put into what looked like a frying pan, and on top of the whole thing, there was a napkin. And this, our winner number 3, is now going to bring into the Heichel. Mishnah Hey. Misha Zocha b'machta, notel machta sakesef, all the Rosh HaMizbeach, the Kohen who was Zocha to bring the fire from the outer Mizbeach, from the Marocha Ketoris to the inner Mizbeach. How was he Zocha? So we just learned he was Zocha because he was standing to the right of winner 3. So he is going to take the silver fire pan. He's going to go to the top of the outer Mizbeach. He's going to push away the top coals to get to the inner, really hot coals. He took the silver fire pan. After he pushed away the top coals on the Maroch Ketoris, he got to the real hot coals. And he took a certain amount of coals in this silver fire pan, which was really, we called it at that time 4 ounces. It's a certain measurement the Mishnah tells us. And he's going to now flip that silver fire pan into a gold fire pan, which only holds 3 ounces. So there are going to be coals that are going to fall on the floor, and we know that going into this. And those coals that fall on the floor were swept into the Amma. We spoke about that a few minutes ago. There was a little waterway going through the Azara in which the blood from the Yesod Romi flowed into. And now this waterway is also going to have the coals that spilled over the golden fire pan swept into there. And we spoke about why we went from 4 to 3. We want to make sure that we have a full fire pan, so we don't do 3 to 3, because 3 to 3 we're going to lose some. So we go 4 into 3, and now we know the fire pan of 3 is going to be full. Some will fall out on the floor, and they'll be put into the Amma. Why did we start with silver? This is the flip side of what we spoke about earlier. HaKadosh Baruch Hu chasam manim shayislah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has rahmanas on Jewish money. He doesn't want us to take a gold fire pan and stick it into a hot fire, a burning fire. So he tells us to use the silver one, and after the silver one has the coals in it, put the coals into the gold one, and with the gold one, this coin is going to come into the Heichel. On Shabbos, where you couldn't push the coals into the waterway, we talked about this when we learned the Mishnah. Even though work is permitted in the Beis Hamikdash, they shechted animals, they sprinkled blood, they did all kinds of things interesting in the Beis Hamikdash that we can't do. But they did what they had to do. What you don't have to do, you don't do. And now we have burning coals on the floor. We can't leave them there because some Kohen can walk in it and burn himself. So we have to sweep them into the water, which is a form of extinguishing a fire. So during the week, we can do that. On Shabbos, what do? We have that big psachter, that big bowl that we said we use for Hutzos Hadeshin when the tapuach was full. We flipped it the psachter to cover up the coals. ובסחתא היה כלי גדול מחזקס לחש שתי שעשועים היה בו אקשו מוישת בביוי ואקשו אייכס בו מן בשביל שלוש סקלו ושלושת דברים היה משמשס. The psachter was used for 3 things. You cover up the coals that spilled out on Shabbos. Well, Asheretz b'Shabbos, if a dead sheretz was found in the Beis Hamikdash on Shabbos, it's also muktzah. So we don't move it. Remember, we learned we don't move it if it's outside the Azora. That's how we paskin according to Rabbi Akiva. We take the psachter, we cover it up. So if there's a dead sheretz, we don't want a Kohen to come in contact with it and become tummy. If the dead sheretz is in the Ezra's Noshim, in this area, we get the psachter and we cover up the dead rat with it on Shabbos. However, if the dead rat is in the Azora, where Tumah is the Oraisa, here we're permitted, there's a way they did it to actually remove the dead sheretz even on Shabbos. So the psachter for a dead sheretz is only outside the Azora. So those are 2 uses of the psachter, to cover up the coals on Shabbos, to cover up a sheretz on Shabbos. And when the tapuach got filled in the middle of the mizbeach, they needed a psachter to fill up the psachter, 1 Kohen at the top of the ramp, 1 Kohen at the bottom of the ramp, holding the rope and bringing it down. And that ash was taken outside the Beis Hamikdash, outside the city of Yerushalayim, and put in a mokum tohar, in a place that was kept tohar, that was not tummy. Mishnah Vav. Higiu bein ha'ulam la'mizbeach. They came between the ulam and the mizbeach. There are 3 actually kohanim. One who has the fire pan, the gold fire pan. One who has the fry pan, in it the cup with the Ketoris, and on top of it the handkerchief, and a 3rd Kohen who is a friend or relative of winner of lottery 3. And now they're between the ulam and the mizbeach. Between the ulam and the mizbeach, diagram 3. They took this musical instrument, which we tried to describe. You have a picture it in V'Hashiv Avoda, and they threw it. And it made some kind of tremendous noise. When this noise was sounded, people couldn't hear each other talk in Yerushalayim. And as we learned earlier, they heard this noise in Yericho. The reason why they threw this magrefa and made such a tremendous noise is for 3 reasons. Kohen sheshomeas kola, a Kohen anywhere that heard this magrefa noise, yodesh elchav hakohan nefnasim l'shtachos. He knows that the avoda is about to be finished, which ends with the ketores. It doesn't end. Of course, after the ketores, they're gonna burn the items on the mizbeach. But the actual avoda, quote unquote, that's a term of art, ends with the ketores. So since we have our kohanim ready to do the ketores, one of these kohanim, one of these three, picked up the magrefa and threw it. So every kohen knew the ketores is about to be brought, the avoda is about to conclude, and therefore all the kohanim have got to get into the azora, get ready to go into the heichal and do a hishtach avodah. That's alarm one. And the second thing we now know is we're getting to the end of the avoda. The end of the avoda also means that the Leviim have to get ready to sing shir on the steps of the duchan. So they need to get ready. And the head of the mamid, we said that the Yisraelim were also broken in, the Jewish people themselves. Not Kohanim, not Leviim, were broken into 24 parts. We spoke about how those maimadas work. The maimad was for Tishmeru. When a korban is brought, the owner of the korban is supposed to be there to witness the bringing of the korban. Well, every day there were public offerings brought, morning, afternoon, on Yom Tov even more, on Shabbos even more, on Rosh Chodesh more. These are public offerings that the whole entire Jewish people paid for through the Maktas HaShekel, which we'll learn about in Shkolim. How does all of Klal Yisrael fulfill the mitzvah of observe and witness the bringing of your korban? You can't get all the Jewish people into the Beis Hamikdash every day of the year and stay there the whole day. So they made shluchim. There were 24 groups of Jews who were in charge of representing all Klal Yisrael, and each of them came for 1 week. And there was a way this was set up. Certain of them lived in Yerushalayim, certain of them lived outside Yerushalayim. It was called the Mainim. The head of that week's Ma'amad took those Kohanim who were Tamid and put them at the eastern gate of the Harabayis. What's the eastern gate of the Harabayis of Baisai? Shushan Abiru. And why did he put them there? So that people who would see Kohanim walking the streets and would, rather than say, bunch of lazy Kohanim, why are they in the Beis HaMikdash doing the avoda, they would now understand that the reason they didn't do the avoda is because they're Tamid. Periklov. Mishnah Aleph. The three Kohanim who are going to work the Ketores, they went to the steps of the Ulam, they waited at the steps of the Ulam, so chick-chock, when things are right, they can walk right into the Ulam, into the Heichel, and do the Ketores. But before they can do that, our winner number 3 and winner number 4 of lottery 2, they didn't finish their jobs. The cleaner of the Mizbeach HaKetores, he left his bowl there with the ash. And winner number 4 only cleaned 5 sticks. He didn't do the last 2 sticks. They went into the Heichel first. The Kohen who cleaned the top of the Mizbeach but left the ash in the bowl, he takes now the teni, he does a hishtach havaya, and he leaves. Our winner 4 of lottery 2 is now going to finish cleaning the menorah, the last 2 sticks. And again, the rules are the last 2 sticks lit still, or the last 2 sticks extinguished. Whatever the case may be, there are different rules. He now cleans those last 2 sticks. And he's going to take now his kuz. He's going to do his hishtach havaya in the heichel. He leaves the heichel. No one's in the heichel now. The menorah is clean and ready for the afternoon lighting. And the Mizbeach HaKetores is ready now for new Ketores this morning. If there were no sticks lit, then you took the fire from the outside Mizbeach to light, if there was necessary to light the 2 easternmost sticks. Mishnah Beis. Misha Zacha b'machta, the Kohen who had the privilege of bringing the fire pan into the Heichel, upon which he's going to take the coals and put it on the Mizbeach. How did he win that privilege? We paskin, because he was standing to the right of winner 3, who's going to do the Ketores. He took that gold fire pan, emptied it on the top of the mizbeach, the bottom of the fire pan, and leveled out the coals on top of the mizbeach so that there was a flat surface upon which to put the Ketores. Mishnah Gimel, Misha Zocha Bakteres, winner of lottery 3. He took the winner of lottery 3 is now in the Heichel, along with his friend or relative. The person, the Kohen, who went into the Heichel, one of the 3 of them that had the coals in his gold fire pan, he put the coals on top of the Mizbeach, he did his Ishtach Havaya, he left, he's done. We now have 2 Kohanim left in the Heichel. Winner of lottery 3, who has in his hand a pan, in the pan, the cup, on the cup, the seal, and on top of the whole thing, there is a handkerchief. Our winner number 3 puts the kaf, he takes the cup out of the fire pan. Obviously, he removes the handkerchief. He takes the cup out of the fire pan. He puts the handkerchief and the fire pan, not the fire pan, he puts the what looks like a frying pan on the floor. He takes the cup, he gives it to his friend. His friend opens the cup, pours out the cup that's full of Ketores into the hands of winner 3. And now this person who did the pouring, he is going to do his Ishtach Havaya, and he is going to take the pan that's on the floor and leave. The cup that had the Ketores in it is left on the floor because winner 3 is going to take that out. So we now have the person, the friend or relative of winner 3 pouring the Ketores into his hand, does his Ishtach Havaya, takes the pan type keli out. We have 1 Kohen left in the Heichel, and that's the way it has to be. When avodah is being done in the Heichel, we learned there's no one else to be there except for that Kohen. In fact, midrabanan, we prohibit anyone, diagram 3. While the Kohen is in the Heichel and he's about to put the Ketores on top of the coals, no one is allowed to be Bein ulam la mizbeach or bein kevesh la mizbeach. You can be here, but you can't be here when the Ketores is being burnt. So therefore, the no Ketores was put on the, I'm sorry, I can't answer questions. We need to finish the Avodas HaTamid. The Kohen who has the Ketores in his hand, he's now ready to put the Ketores on top of the burning coals. He has been taught before he went in there how to put the Ketores on the coals. You start from the western side of the Mizbeach and move east. Why? So you don't burn yourself. If he puts the Ketores on the part of the Mizbeach, the eastern part that's near his body, the smoke will rise. And then he moves his hands westward and westward and westward. His hands are going to get burned in the smoke. So he's taught before he goes in there, start putting the Ketores down on the western part of the Mizbeach and move your hands towards your body so you're moving your hands away from the smoke and the fire. Before he's allowed to start putting the Ketores on the coals, the Mamuna, the supervisor, shouts to him, Hakter, you can now start. And he doesn't start do that until he hears that, because the Mamuna makes sure that no one's standing in an impermissible place in the Azorah, which we just saw in diagram 3, Ben Kevesh Lamizbeach, Ben Ulam Lamizbeach, Ben Kevesh Ulam. No one's supposed to stand there while he's burning the Ketores. So the Mamuna made sure no one's standing there. Once no one's standing there, he says, Hakter, and our winner number 3 puts the Ketores starting from the outer part of the Mizbeach towards his body. He's finished doing the Ketores. He does a Ishtach Havaya. He takes the pan, he takes the buzzer, the cup that was left on the floor, and he leaves the Heichel. Perek Zayin, Mishnah Aleph. Bisman shekohen gadol nichnas l'shtach lo shlosh, and the Mishnah said at the end, if it was the Kohen Gadol bringing the Ketores, instead of saying Hakter, go, burn the Ketores, he said it with more of a derech eretz. Ishi Kohen Gadol, my master Kohen Gadol, Hakter. Mishnah Aleph. Bisman shekohen gadol nichnas l'shtach lo shlosh achazim bo. If the Kohen Gadol decided he wants to do the avoda, he wants to bring the animal parts to the top of the mizbeach. So, before we get to that, when the Kohen Gadol is going to go in, he does his own ishtach havaya inside the heichal. 3 out of derech kavod, 3 kohanim assist him to go into the ulam, and then he goes into the heichal, and then they leave him, according to the way we learned, to have a private ishtach havaya. They closed the curtains of the ulam, so that he did a private ishtach havaya. One kohen held him from the right, one kohen held him from the left, one kohen held the heavy stones that he was wearing, so that as he bent over, it wouldn't be that much pressure, assuming if you hold that the 3 kohanim were there when he did his ishtach havaya. Otherwise, they just assisted him as he bowed down and then left. The curtains of the ulam got closed, and he did a private ishtach havaya. When the supervisor heard that sometimes Muna means supervisor, sometimes it means the assistant Kohen Gadol. We're going to learn more about that in Shkolim. When they heard, the Mamuna heard the Kohen Gadol's feet coming out of, meaning the Kohen Gadol was leaving. But where did he hear it? Because the Kohen Gadol had bells at the bottom of his me'il, and you heard him walking. So when the Mamuna heard the bells, he pulled the curtains apart, and he was able to leave the Heichel. And only after the Kohen Gadol did his Hishtach Havaya did the other Kohanim do their Hishtach Havaya. Remember, we already brought the Ketores, so for quote unquote, the technical term of art, the Avodah is done. The Avodah is done, Hishtach Havaya. Kohen Gadol went into the Heichel, closed the curtain of the Ulam. Again, picture number 3. The Ulam is that building in front of the Heichel. The Ulam has no door. It has an opening, the largest, 20 by 40, no door but curtains. The Kohen was assisted in by 3 Kohanim. He went into the Heichel. They closed the curtains so he would be privately in the Heichel. Ishtach Havaya walked out backwards. The bells are ringing. The Mamuna can hear him. He opens the curtain so the Kohen can go out. The other Kohanim now go into the Heichel and do their Hishtach Havaya together. Mishnah Beis. The Kohanim are now ready to duchen. Where do they duchen? On the 12 steps of the Ulam, not on the place in your picture called Duchan. The Duchan between the Ezras Yisrael and the Ezras Kohanim, that's where Leviim stood and sang Shira on the carbon. Kohanim duchen here, 12 steps of the Ulam. The first 5 Kohanim that got to the steps of the Ulam was winner 3, lottery 2, who cleaned the inner mizbeach, and he now has the teni with him. It's empty because they poured the teni and the kuz on the eastern side of the mizbeach, the Beis Hadeshen. He's holding the empty teni. Winner number 4 is standing next to him, and he's holding an empty kuz that had the wick and the oil in it, which he also poured out on the eastern side of the mizbeach at the Beis Hadeshen. And the Kohen who brought the coals into the heichal, he's there now with an empty fire pan. The Kohen who burnt the ketores, he's now holding an empty cup. And his friend who went in with him is now holding that empty pan with the handkerchief on top of it. So this is a sign to everybody, the avoda is done. The mizbeach's been cleaned, the ketores been brought, the menorah is ready for the afternoon. Avoda is done, let's duchen now. Now the rest of the Kohanim gathered around them on the steps of the Ulam. They now duchen. But in the Beis Hamikdash, there were several differences. When they duchen the Beis Hamikdash, they didn't say Varech Hashem Yishmerecha and then Amen. They said Varech Hashem Yishmerecha Yashem Panav Elech V'Chuneki So Hashem Panav Elech V'Yasem Shalom. They said it as one pasuk. El Sheba Medina, outside the Beis Hamikdash, Oymasa Shalish brachas. Then you say it 3 brachas. With Hamikdash bracha achas, in the Beis Hamikdash, it's one long bracha, one pasuk. But Hamikdash ha'oymos, as Hashem Kiksava, in the Beis Hamikdash, when they duchen for a certain amount of time, after Shimon HaTzadik died 40 years into the Beis Hamikdash, they stopped doing this in the second Beis Hamikdash. But duchening used to occur, Birchas Kohanim occurred, with saying Yud K Vav K with its real pronunciation. Uva Medina, if Kohanim duchen outside the Beis Hamikdash bechinuyo, they said Aleph Daled Nun Yud. Ba Medina Kohanim nosem es kapeyim yideim kineged kisvoseim v'Hamikdash agabe rasheim. Kohanim that duchen outside the Beis Hamikdash, their hands are stuck out equal to their shoulder height. Uva Hamikdash agabe rasheim. In the Beis Hamikdash, they lifted their hands above their heads. In the Beis Hamikdash, the Shechina came, a certain form of Shechina came to the fingertips of the Kohen, and therefore, since the Shechina was there, they wanted to show that the Shechina is higher than the human being, and therefore the hands were raised above the head. Outside the Beis Hamikdash, where there's not that level of Shechina, they duchen with their hands outstretched, level of shoulders. The exception to this rule of shoulder or over the head is the Kohen Gadol, because even in the Beis Hamikdash, he kept his hands shoulder level. He did not raise his hands above his head, even the Beis Hamikdash, because the Kohen Gadol is wearing a tzitz, a plate across his forehead. Yud Kei Vav Kei, God's name is inscribed in that tzitz, and you don't want the Kohen Gadol to lift his hands above Yud Kei Vav Kei. That's the first sheet in the Mishnah. Therefore, Kohanim in the Beis Hamikdash were able to lift their hands above their head. The Kohen Gadol did not lift his hands above his head. That's the first sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Af Kohen Gadol the Kohen Gadol can also lift his hands above the tzitz." Shenema, the pasuk says, when Aaron duchen, Vayista Aaron as Yodav Balaam, Aaron raised his hands towards the people, which makes it sound like he lifted his hands extended towards people and above his head. Vayavochem, and he blessed them. Mishnah Gimel. Bisman sheKohen Gadol writes al hakdeh. What happens if the Kohen Gadol decides one day he wants to be makdeh? He can do it even if he did it 100 times before. Although other Kohanim were only permitted to do it once, you can get a second chance if all your base Av did it, but that never happened. A Kohen Gadol can do it as many times as he wants. So how do you get the 7 items to the top of them, the 9 items to the top of the Mizbeach, if the Kohen Gadol wants to actually put these things on the Maracha? He walked up the ramp, the assistant Kohen Gadol was to his right. He got to the halfway point of the ramp. The assistant Kohen Gadol held him from his right side and helped him up the rest of the ramp. Now we have and the way they did this was the Kohanim who won, the 6 Kohanim who won the lottery number 2, each of them brought a pot. This is at least according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Each of them brought their pot up to the Kohen Gadol. Kohen Gadol put his hands on it, only a rabbinic smicha, putting your hands on the animals only when it's alive. The animal is now already shechted. This is a smicha d'Rabbanan to show dignity to the Kohen Gadol that he's playing an important role in the korban. So winner number 5, who has the head and the right leg of the animal, he brings it up to the Kohen does smicha, puts it on maracha, etc. Number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6. Number 7, number 8, but now we have number 9. Number 9 has the wine. The Kohen Gadol has to walk around the whole Mizbeach. He's on the southeast side of the Mizbeach, because that's where the Maracha Gedol is, and that's where he's been putting these animal pots. He needs to get to the southwest side of the Mizbeach, where you're going to pour the wine. He cannot take the wine and walk around the whole Mizbeach, because then the wine is going to get smoked and hot and will not be kosher to pour on the Mizbeach. So he walks around, he makes a right turn, always right turns, and he walks right, and he gets to the southwest corner of the Mizbeach. The Kohen, who is number 9 of those winners of Lottery 2, hands the Kohen Gadol the flask of wine. The assistant Kohen Gadol stands at the top of the Mizbeach on the Keren, and he has handkerchiefs in his hand. There are 2 Kohanim that are standing, and we mentioned, on the western side of the Mizbeach, there's a silver table that has the 93 vessels. There's a marble table upon which parts of private karbonos will be placed before they go on top of the Mizbeach. And there's nothing there now because no karbonos are there. You can't do any karbonos till you do the carbon Tamid. So this marble, the marble table is empty right now. And these 2 Kohanim stood on the marble table, or next to the marble table. Each of them has a trumpet. They did a tekiah, trua tekiah. This is not counted towards the 18 truas and tekiyahs that were done every day. This is separate tekiah, trua tekiah. One more announcement, one more alarm clock. Any kohen around here, get to the ulam steps now because we're going to, this is the last alarm for Levium. Any Levium around, get to the duchen because we're about to start singing Shira. Bov Amdu Eitzel Ben Arza. Ben Arza is one of Al Mamunim, and he is the one in charge of the cymbals. So they went to the duchen after they blasted Tekiah, Trua Tekiah as the alarm for the Levium. They got off the tables, walked to the duchen. We look at diagram number 3. Your diagram shows you the tables. They got off the table. They made their way to the duchen, which is right here. Ben Arza was there, and he has the cymbals. One of these 2 Kohanim stands to his right, one stands to his left. Shachal Naseh, the Kohen, if he's the Kohen Gadol or Kohen Hedi, whoever's pouring the wine, he sees from the top of the Mizbeach, he sees the Levium are now congregated on the duchen, and they're ready to sing Shir. And Shir can only be sung as the wine is being poured. Wine makes a heart joyful, and Shira is what you sing when you're in a state of joy. So the Shira is done on the pouring of the wine. So the Kohen Gadol now bends down to the top of the Mizbeach. We saw the 2 sapolim yesterday on the southwest corner of the Mizbeach. The sapolim were like kalim, vessels that had spigots to them. One was for the wine for every day, and one was for the water on Sukkot. So the Kohen is now bending over towards the spigot, towards the keli that has the spigot for wine. V'heinef haskan b'sudarim. The Sgan, the assistant Kohen Gadol, who's standing on the Mizbeach, waves his handkerchiefs. Levium were ready. V'hikish ben Arza betzelzel. Ben Arza, who's standing on the floor of the Azor. Remember we said yesterday, only the singing Levium stood on the duchen. Levium who played instruments stood on the floor of the Azor next to the duchen. Ben Arza is an instrument player. He's holding the cymbal, so he's standing on the floor of the Azor. And there are all kinds of instruments. We saw them yesterday in the pictures and in different numbers. All those people were standing on the floor of the Azor. Only singers were on the duchen. Only Levium can be singers. Yisraelim can be music, can be instrument players. And when you said that it's only Yisraelim who have the yichus that their daughters were able to marry Kohanim. So Yisraelim were able to play instruments. Instruments players are standing on the floor of the Azorah. The singers, only Levium, are on the duchen. V'dibra Levium b'shir. The wine is now being poured. The Levium are now singing Shira. The instruments are playing, and they're saying the mizmor of that day, the shir of that day. Higil Perik, we mentioned that every shir shel yom was broken into 3 paragraphs, into 3 sections. They came, so before they started Shira, there was a tekiah, trua tekiah. We're not talking about the trua tekiah when they were standing on the tables. That's the alarm. Levium get to the duchen. Done. Those two now came to next to Ben Arza, and they're near the Duchen. Tekiah, Trua, Ben Arza hits his cymbals, Tekiah, Trua, Tekiah. Levium now say, first part of the shear. Stop. Taku. Now you have another Tekiah, Trua, Tekiah. During the Tekiah, Trua, Tekiah, whenever it was a Tekiah, Trua, Tekiah, anyone in the Azorah bowed and did Ishtachavaya. I'll call Perek Tekiah. Every time the Levium stopped in the three spots, there was a Tekiah. I'll call Tekiah, mean Tekiah, Trua, Tekiah. I'll call Tekiah, Ishtachavaya. For every Tekiah, there's Ishtachavaya. There are different shitas. The way we learned was before the Levium began, there was a Tekiah, Trua, Tekiah, Ishtachavaya. Ben Arza hit the cymbals either before the Tekiah, Trua, Tekiah, or after the Tekiah, Trua, Tekiah. The Levium now said, we'll say 1/3 of the Shir Shel Yom. Stop. Tekiah, Trua, Tekiah with the Ishtachavaya. Ben Arza hits his cymbals. The Levium say the second third of the Kapitel Tehillim. Stop. Tekiah, Trua, Tekiah, Ishtachavaya. Ben Arza hits his cymbals. And the Kohanim say the last third of the Mizmor, and that's the end of the Mizmor Shir Shel Yom. So there are 3 sets of Tekiah, Trua, Tekiyahs. That's 9 blasts in the morning. You're going to do the same thing in the afternoon, 9 blasts. That's 18 blasts a day. Shabbos, there are more. Yontif, there's more, etc. That's explained in Maseches Sukkah. So we now have 9 Tekiah, Trua, Tekiyahs in the morning. For every set of Tekiah, Trua, Tekiyahs, there's a Ishtachavaya, and the Trua, Tekiah, Trua, Tekiah was at the beginning of the Kapitel, 1/3 into the Kapitel, and 2/3 into the Kapitel. And Rabbi Isai, the Gemara in Menachos says that when you learn about a korban, it's as if you brought the korban. And we say in the Shalma Parms Faseinu, when we daven, it's as if we bring the korban. But more than that, the Gemara in Menachos, at the end of the Gemara, talks about a person that learns the Parsha of Chatas, as if he brought a korban Chatas. He learned the Parsha of Oila, as if he brought an Oila. Rabbi Isai, today we brought a korban Tamid. We began from Perek Aleph, and now we are up to these words, the famous words we read. Zer hu seder hatamid la'avodas beis Elokeinu. This is the order of how a korban tamid is brought in the Beis Hamikdash. Yehi rotzen sheyibana b'mheira b'yameinu. Amen. Should be our will and God's will that the Beis Hamikdash should be built speedily in our days. And now that we've become a bit familiarized with how to bring a korban, we know if we were standing, those of you who are Kohanim have an idea of what the avoda would look like. Those of you who are Leviim know what the shir is going to look like. And Yisraelim have an idea of your Ishtachavoyas. And if you witness the avoda, you understand what's going on. The final Mishnah we explained yesterday is the shir for every day. We left the last line of the Mishnah for tomorrow's Siyum, Amer Tashem, B'Shabbos V'Yachayim, the Shir Shel Yom of Shabbos. We explained yesterday why Mishnah Dalet is not, why the Hiratzon. So Hiratzon, may it be God's will that the Beis HaMikdash be built, should be at the end of the last Mishnah. It should be the last line on page 19. Instead, it's the last line in Mishnah Gimel, and then there's another Mishnah Dalet. Okay, so we talked about that yesterday, but this is the Seder HaTamid L'Avodas Beis Elokeinu Yiratzen Sheibana B'Meira B'Yameinu Amen. And I hope that everybody got the Seder. If you didn't get the Seder, that's all you have to do is reread what we read today. Wherever you have a question, go to page 37. It's the index for all the pictures, Mishnah by Mishnah. The halachas are also in the back, the halachas for every step in the avodah. Some of these halachas we read.